Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Iron Bark podcast. I am your host, Epion. Do you guys remember a few podcast episodes ago when I was talking about this guy he's like an 80-year-old dude. He lives in Montana and he like cloned a sheep and he like bred it with a bighorn sheep. He got like a sheep from Asia that was a jacked version of a bighorn sheep. He made a hybrid. And he got in trouble for it. Well, guess what? That dude has been sentenced. So he's 81 years old. He's an 81-year-old Montana man. And he got sentenced on Monday to 6 months in federal prison for illegally using tissue and testicles from a large sheep hunted in Central Asia and use it to breed one with the U.S. or American or North American variety of bighorn sheep, which has been coined or called the Montana Mountain King. So, potentially, for a guy this old, I mean, round of applause for a guy this old that's still working and like working on a ranch. So this guy worked on like a ranch, a game farm basically, where people could come and hunt big game. Why this is such a big deal, why it is so illegal, mind you, ignoring all the like laws, okay, that exist, like you can't import this, I can't import that, okay, just that's all illegal too. I'm not saying it's not valid or whatever, but let's just simplify it so that most people understand why it's illegal, which I think is the most important part about it. Because some people will just say like, oh, well, I think that law's stupid. Okay, well, let me explain to you why it's the law and why it's not that stupid. So you take a bighorn sheep from Central Asia, which is far bigger than the ones in North America, okay, or you take its DNA in this instance, and you clone it and then you make it mate with a local species and you create a hybrid. Well, that hybrid is now, it's got a bigger set of horns, it's got more mass. So the risk here and the potential danger, since it's on an open land ranch kind of like area where it could potentially mate with local species and or escape and so on and so forth, that animal would become the dominant breeding specimen. It would have all the breeding rights because, you know, bighorn sheep, rams, aka mountain like rams are not technically goats or sheep. Mountain goats are a separate thing. They have to fight for breeding rights, like they bash heads together. This one would win every time. It's got more weight behind it. It's got a bigger set of horns. It would easily, within like a single generation, I think, become its hybridized offspring would become the dominant species and completely erase the former North American bighorn sheep. That's the potential threat it has to actually wipe out an entire species at scale, right? So that's why it's illegal. So he got sentenced to 6 months. Is that a bit excessive for an 81-year-old guy? I don't know. I'm sure he got a much lighter sentence than other people who would be much younger would get. And I'm pretty sure his age accounted for it. Potentially a death sentence? Is it? When you're 81 years old, you're in jail for 6 months. I really hope he doesn't die in prison. I hope, he gets out eventually. Though I do not agree with what he did. It's kind of, maybe I got a bit of a bleeding heart here. I don't know. The animal, so the animal's been confiscated, and as far as I know, it wasn't destroyed. It's being held, and they're going to give it to a zoo. Now, if I owned a zoo, or if I was a zoo that was in contention for this, I would be putting up whatever money I had available to get that animal in the zoo from a business point of view, because this is an ethically obtained animal. Most times you would hear stories about this animal being destroyed because they'd be like, no, it's too much of a risk, this and that, da-da-da-da-da. They went with a more sensitive way of dealing with it. They're like, no, we're going to put it in a zoo where it won't be able to affect the wild environment. This thing's legendary, right? It's the Montana Mountain King. It's got a big story behind it. It's got, it's made headlines. It's being talked about on social media. It's not super viral, but it's about as viral as animal stuff gets, in this sort of content creation sphere. It would be super interesting and super neat if then people could then go and see this animal and they get to see the story behind it, they can, maybe there's a plaque where they can read like the little story, like this guy did this and this and that. And I don't want to see an animal. Like the animal didn't ask to be brought into this world. It was just brought in. Humans were fucking around and they just, scienced the shit out of it and, did some illegal shit. No fault at all to the animal. And I'm sure there are zoos that will like the appeal of it and it'll be well taken care of. Unfortunately, it doesn't really have a natural habitat, right? It's creation of science, so you can't really let it live in the wild. Though you can, in theory, give it a really good enclosure, hopefully the largest one they can provide, as most animals should have when they're inside a zoo. And hopefully they have lots of enrichment to mimic its what its wild environment would most likely be like. So somewhere between Central Asia and North America. And so hopefully they give it like a very mountain-esque enclosure, though it's pretty difficult to mimic the sort of altitude and all that stuff of the wild because you can't actually do that. But they don't always necessarily spend their time at altitude. But yeah, they come down the mountains and they're at the side of the road. So if, there's a zoo in Montana somewhere that's close to the mountains, fair enough. So I recommend y'all go and give that story a little read. Probably get a much better insight on it than what I could explain to you. But that's a cool little update to a story. I don't have a whole lot else to talk about today. I got nothing. I got 0. Just being a wildlife content creator is pretty difficult. Sometimes it involves like taking little stories and pretending like they're big deals, sort of. I see a lot of people doing that, and I'm like, and it gets into like the clickbaity stuff, and I'm just like, I don't agree with this shit. I don't like it. Why are they doing this? It's like, and I sort of did that last week's podcast with the micro black holes. Sorry about that. But to quote the age-old adage, it is what it is. What can I talk about? I wanted to, what if somehow this guy didn't disclose that this bighorn sheep wasn't even the first one? What if this guy's been doing this forever? What if he's been doing it forever? What if this is just the first time he's got caught? What if there are Montana mountain kings out there? Would you admit to it if you thought you were going to get more charges? Probably not, right? So don't be surprised if somewhere down the line their conservation officers are doing DNA analysis of random sheep species and they're going, this one's horns are pretty big. Yeah, that's weird. It's weird. Why do they do that? And then I look at it and they're like, holy fuck, Ricky. It's a Montana mountain king. Don't be surprised. I could do a better impression than that. Okay, this is going to be Bubbles from the Trailer Park Boys discovering the Montana Mountain King. Holy fuck, boys. Would you fucking look at that? Look at the DNA analysis, Ricky. What does that say to you? Never mind, you can't fucking read. It says Montana Mountain King. It's one of those fucking hybrids they were making down in Montana. That's about as good as it's going to get, guys. I could make entire Trailer Park Boys episodes in my head about this. So then they find the Montana Mountain King, right? They find out someone. So then Julian gets involved, and Julian says, wait on a second, Bubbles. You know how much money we can make off this fucking thing? The zoos everywhere will be paying top dollar for it. Hundreds are going to want to hunt this. We can make a big buck out of this. This is our big chance at retirement. I don't give a fuck what it's worth. I don't want any fucking part of it. Every time you guys do something like this, it's heavily illegal and I'm going to end up in jail. And then they go on and try to like move the sheep around. They got it like in the back of a car. And the thing just keeps like Ricky's in the back, like trying to make sure it doesn't get out because like maybe the door can't close properly. And the thing just keeps fucking like headbutting Ricky over and over again. And he's like fighting in the back and he just keeps getting like fucked up by it. And then eventually they get pulled over by the police or like state troopers or something. They're like, what the fuck are you Canadians up to? What are you doing? And he's just like, it's like, I mean, Ricky comes up with like some fucked up story and he's like all covered in like, he's like, oh. It would be a sick Trailer Park Boys episode and you know it. You know it would be. You fucking know it would be. You can imagine it right now. You can imagine it. If I can think it, you can imagine it. What else? What else could I talk about? Yeah, it's going to be a cryptid. It's definitely going to be a cryptid at some point. It's going to make its way up to Canada. It's going to be like Montana Mountain Kings and from Montana up in Alberta. It's going to happen. They're going to be in Idaho. They're going to be all over the place. They're going to be BC. They're going to be British Columbia. They're going to be everywhere. Won't be able to stop them. The most powerful animal ever known to humanity. The Montana Mountain King. Thought of to only be a mythical creature, it is now considered to be quite a reality, and it is devastating to the bighorn mountain sheep of North America and also the mountain goats of North America. Nobody's car is safe. It attacks cars on sight as they pass on the highway. Please drive with caution as you move through the mountains. These are now the Montana Mountain Kings Mountains. They do not belong to us anymore. That would be like my David Attenborough documentary on it. Should I make like a, like, what do they call it once, like a fake documentary? Like a wackumentary? What do they call it? Like a fake-a-mentary? There's a word for it and I know everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about right now. Mockumentary. Mock you, like a mockery. A mock-up. I want to make a mockumentary. You know what else I want to make? I want to make like a Blair Witch style movie. I want to be in my own movie. I want to be a movie star. Not actually, but I do want to make like a small sort of like, I wouldn't even call it an independent film. It'd be just like an internet film. I want to make an internet film in the style of like the Blair Witch Project. Now I just have to convince someone to either hold the camera for me and record me saying stupid ass shit, or I record somebody else. I'm good with either way. I just want to make like a Blair Witch style movie. There will be no script. It'll all be like improv. It'll be improvisioned. I feel like I could do like a cool like viral like campaign for it. Be like, put a post on social media, make it look legit. Like, guys, I found this like old camera out in the woods. Hope it's not somebody's. Gonna share some of the footage when I get back home. And then like you put out like a clip of the footage and it's just like maybe like the first 5 minutes of like the actual movie you're putting together, but people like, it looks real, right? Like you're like, what the fuck did this guy find? What the fuck did this guy find out in the woods? And then like you create like a stir on like, you know, media like outlets start reporting on it. Local man has found a video recording of a man who may have been attacked by grizzly bears. In the footage, it's quite disturbing. Please watch at your own caution. And then they show like this like weird ass clip. And then everyone later is just like, we've been duped. We fucking got us. That fucking guy fucking got us. That movie was shit. That movie was shit. All that fucking hype of that fucking movie was shit. The fuck did he make us watch? That fucking lunatic. Hope he didn't make any fucking money off of that piece of shit. Oh, fuck, that'd be pretty funny. I don't know. Anyway. Thanks for tuning in, folks. I need to talk about the podcast for a second. I switched my provider, or like my publisher, I guess that's what it's called. My RSS feed distributor? publisher. I'm not quite sure what the fuck it's called, but I switched them. The last one I was using was very good. It distributed it to all the platforms. I'm the biggest on Samsung, so if you guys listen on Samsung, you're the realist. But here's my issue. I don't know if this one will auto-publish to Samsung. So this is kind of an experiment. So if you're listening to this late or it didn't come up on time and it didn't come up till Monday or something like that, I apologize. But hear me out. Good reason. When I first started doing this podcast, finding an RSS feed was difficile. It was difficult. It was very hard to find like an adequate one that wasn't super expensive. So I was going with Podbean for a while. But Podbean is actually, it costs quite a bit of money. Not really. It costs a little bit of, it's affordable. It's more than affordable. But like I think it's less than $10 a month if you break it down. Spotify is free. It's free. So, as a business decision, I decided we should go with the free one. It'll save us money. And not only that, the path to monetization is also much more laid out, streamlined. I'm not entirely sure if it's easier to obtain, but the benchmarks are the ways you would go about it just seem to be outlined fairly easily. So I decided to do that. It's like, oh well, fuck, like this will be way easier to monetize than this ambiguous sort of like, yeah, figure it out for yourself, kid. Like, I don't know, get sponsorships, you know. By the way, Oakley and Arcteri, if you're listening to this, I wouldn't mind a little sponsor. But yeah, so we're going over to Spotify. We're already there. This is the first time I'm uploading, so if there's any glitches or stuff like that, be patient. I'll work on it throughout the week. So it was mostly just a financial decision. I'm hoping that Samsung just inherently just scrapes the podcast because I've uploaded my RSS to the Samsung, like Samsung directly, like the website for podcasters, but there isn't like an affiliate link on Spotify. Usually there's one on Spotify and there's one on Samsung, and you put your link from Samsung to Spotify and Spotify to and they sort of like interlink and they have a baby and they produce your podcast. And I'm not sure if that's going to the way it is, but we'll see if it just automatically uploads. It just does like the auto scrape. It does take more time usually on subsequent things, so I might have to check hours later or even a day later to make sure, but that's why it's not showing up there. But I am looking up for the Samsung listeners because I know you guys are you're my peeps, you're my people, you're my fucking people out there. So I gotta look out for you. You guys supported the most. You supported the most, and I'll never forget that. So wish me luck, because as I finish recording this, I'm going to be tinkering around with the new one, and hopefully it's just as good. I'm hoping that it auto-generates a video for me as well, so I can share that on other platforms like YouTube and the X there. Good night, folks. Thank you for listening to my ramblings. Thank you for enjoying the Ironbark Podcast.